All right, perfect. So we are live and we are recording. And so what we're going to go through today, again, thank you all so much for jumping on. What we're going to talk about today is how to manage your transactions like a pro. And that means managing them through opportunities. So the main things that we're going to talk about today is how to really like the best practices for using opportunities from the very beginning. So not just going into opportunities once you have a buyer under contract or once we have an active listing. We're going to talk about some really cool functionality and some features that you have in the opportunities and how to best use that. We're also going to talk a good amount today about one of the best features that you have in opportunities, which is checklist. So just raise your hand or maybe drop it in the chat. Has anybody used checklist at all in opportunities in your business so far? No? Okay, so I see some head nods. Excuse me. You're thinking that's why we're here, right? To be able to create those checklists. Yeah. So we'll talk about checklists. We'll talk about best practices for using checklists. We'll talk about managing checklists. And then we're actually going to talk about one of my favorite features in opportunities, which is client updates. So client updates pull from checklist, and I'll actually show you that in a live environment, and we'll speak to that. That's why checklists, though, are so important that we are doing that to manage our transactions.
But is what
so first things first is we're going to talk about how to actually create an opportunity. So just by a show of hands, or you can drop it in the chat, who here has created an opportunity before in Command? So you've created a buyer opportunity. Okay, great. Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Okay, so I see some thumbs up. Julie, the other Julie, Kathleen. Okay, great. Thank you guys. So we're going to talk about how to create opportunities and really the best way to create opportunities for that. So give me 1 second and I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to pull up some opportunities here. So let me just move some things around. All right. Perfect. So fingers crossed, you all should be able to see my command screen right now. We've got test client right there. Is everybody able to see that? Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to turn on, I have a little cursor that allows you to see kind of where I'm moving my mouse at all times. It just helps a little bit. So we're going to turn that on. So again, remember Command, when we're talking about Command, the way that I think of Command is essentially like a smartphone. So all of us might have the same Android or the same iPhone. We might have the same apps on it, meaning we've got 20 or 30 apps. Yet you might find that you use this app and I never even touched that app. Command is the same thing. There's apps over here that you might not use yet. You might want to start to use later. However, my biggest suggestion is that when you really want to start to dive into Command and use Command for your business and to help track and manage your business, that we start with opportunities. So the way that I think of opportunities is opportunities are transactions, yet they're not just transactions that you have right now. And you'll see when we get to the opportunities, you'll see what we mean by that is you've got cultivate, you've got appointment, active, under contract, and close. So we've got all of these different phases in opportunities. So the way that I think of opportunities is if we were to go into your office, there's a chance that we might see a big whiteboard hanging in your office. And we might see, these are my active buyers, these are my active sellers, these are people that I have pending or under contract, and these are my closings that are happening for the month. So what's really cool about opportunities is we have the ability to add all of that into opportunities, but you have some really, really great artificial intelligence working behind the scenes for you that allows you to start to have a better understanding of your conversion rates. So when I take somebody that's a potential appointment, what is my conversion rate of actually moving that to an active buyer or an active seller? So if I had to give you one tip as far as starting to use with opportunities, it would be this. Use opportunities from the very beginning. What I mean by that is use opportunities when someone has raised their hand and said, we are somewhat interested in buying or somewhat interested in selling. That is the cultivate phase. By you giving it that data, opportunity starts to understand you just a bit more. And we're going to go through that together. Now I'm starting with an opportunity under an actual contact. So ahead of us all jumping on this class together, I went into my contacts and I just searched for a contact there. This is myself that's in there as a fake contact. And then you'll see that over on the right, are all of the activities that I've completed or I'm working on with this particular contact. Now I'm in the opportunities tab right up here, and I have 7 opportunities under this contact, which means I have 7 potential transactions with this contact. Now remember, it's going to show me my upcoming opportunities with them, but it's also going to show previous opportunities that I might have closed with this particular contact. So number 1, I can take a look at the opportunities that I have here that are existing. However, I can also come right here and I can very easily create an opportunity under this contact. And I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So we're going to choose create opportunity. And then you'll see that a box is going to pop up, or a window that's going to tell you all the information that you want to enter. Now the market center is going to be locked in here because most of you are probably only out of 1 market center. So you're not going to ever have to worry about updating that or changing that. Now I do want to pay attention to the team. If you're on a team, you might want to pick your team here, unless it's a private opportunity, which that's a conversation that you could have with your team. But understand that if you're a solo agent, you're never going to really have that drop down under the team. And then underneath here is where we're going to pick what opportunity type is it. So is it a listing opportunity, meaning that it's a potential seller, or is it a buyer opportunity? We're going to do a buyer opportunity for this one. And then you'll see next to that, we have the owner. Now, this is not the owner of the property or who will own the property. This is the owner of this opportunity. So that is going to be your name right there. And we actually can't even change that. So this is essentially who will this close under? Who owns this opportunity? Now, right here, I've got the client name because I went in to create the opportunity directly under the client contact card. So I've already got the contact right there. I picked a buyer opportunity. If I had another buyer, a co-buyer, someone that was purchasing the house with them, I'd be able to click right here and I'd be able to pick that other buyer. I can just start typing and the buyer's names that I have in my contacts will pop up. So remember, you have to have a contact in Command to be able to add that contact to an opportunity. So it all starts from a contact, and then we can go in and create the opportunity. Now, underneath that, we have the opportunity name. If this was a buyer opportunity, does anybody have any thoughts on what we might want to name this opportunity? Thoughts on that? Buyer last name, Jamie, that's a good one. Yeah. Any other thoughts? So I always recommend that if we know the address, let's name the opportunity the address. Because then as we're looking through opportunities, we start to understand that. Now, just like Jamie was saying, we might have buyers that we're cultivating and they're not ready to purchase a home yet, or we don't know which home they're going to purchase. And so we might want to call this like Smith Family Search. So we can put whatever we'd like in there. Underneath there, we can put custom tags. These are custom tags that are associated with this particular. Yeah. Oh, yes.
The question, for the opportunity name, if you you knew they was going to be buying a property, would that be their home address where they currently live at? That's what you will put there?
So that's a great question. Thank you. If we knew that they are a buyer and they're going to be purchasing a home from us, we would put the property address of the home that they're purchasing if we know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If they're a seller and they're selling their home, we would put the address of the home right there. But if we don't know which one they're going to go under contract with yet, or they're just not sure, we might just call it something that we know which of our buyers this is. Does that answer that a little bit?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. We've also got custom tags underneath here. So custom tags are really nice because those can be associated with this particular opportunity. And you'll see when we go into an opportunity, we can take a look at those custom tags right underneath there. So as we think of buyers, we might want to know, is this a buyer that's using my lending partner? And do I want to have that tag that's right there? What type of loan are they getting, or are they paying cash? And do I want to have all of those tags right there? Are they a first-time home buyer? Do I want to have all of that right there? So we can create these custom tags just by coming here and starting to type. And then it allows us to create a custom tag specifically for that opportunity. Again, you don't have to use these custom tags. It's just more things that you can kind of do to be able to filter through once we have a lot of opportunities. And so we'll say that maybe they're also a first-time home buyer. Now, the next section is the estimated closing date. Second, I'm just going to mute someone. The next section is the estimated closing date. So when do we think that they might be closing on this house? Again, all of this can be changed later if we don't know it right now. So if we click on the calendar, it's going to open up a nice little calendar window for us. And we'll say that maybe they're closing, we'll say April 27th for them. All right, and then we've got their budget. So if they're not going under contract right now, we might not specifically know their budget, but we hopefully have some sort of understanding of what their price range is for this. So we're going to say that their price range is maybe $250,000. Now, once they go under contract and we truly know the amount of the opportunity, we can update that at any time. And then the final thing is the commission rate, because this is how it's going to calculate approximately how much money is really going to be coming to you for this commission rate. I always like to be pleasantly surprised rather than disappointed. So on a buyer side, I would tell you to kind of err just a tiny bit lower. And then if it indeed is more than that, we can come back later and make any changes to that. And so once we've created that opportunity, all we would do is click on the green button down here, which is going to allow us to create this opportunity. And that opportunity will then be associated with this contact. So you'll see right here under this contact, we've got the opportunities that we have. Smith Family Search is the one that we just entered, and we've got it right there.
I'm sorry, Sydney. What was the when you were under that other tab before it went to this page, and it said time frame? What is time frame?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jamie. Time frame is if we don't know the closing date yet, and this is a buyer that's saying we're 6 months out, we're 3 months out, whatever it is, and then it'll give you kind of a date frame of when they're thinking of purchasing.
Okay. And when we do that, is there somewhere on Command where it tracks that for us, or kind of constantly updates, you know, like, okay, well, if it's 3 months out, when it hits month 2, does it update it in Command that it's went from 3 to 2 months?
So it'll show you, because it'll show you like dates for that based off of it. What I would suggest doing is probably a checklist, which is what we'll talk about in a moment, depending on how far out they are. And I'll show you how I've kind of redone my opportunities for that as well, just to kind of keep on task of those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I need to go out window today.
Any other questions on just creating an opportunity? We're good. Fantastic. So now we're going to jump over to opportunities. So we've created the opportunity. We're going to actually jump over to opportunities. You can do that a couple different ways. Remember, anytime that we click on the red box up here at the top left, it's going to open up that window of all the applets that we have in Command. Opportunities is about halfway down the page. It looks like the little hand shaking, and we've got opportunities right there. We can also, if we want to go specifically into the opportunity that we just created, we can do that by just clicking on the name of the opportunity that is over here. So I'm actually going to go into opportunities just by clicking over here on the left, because I want to look at opportunities as a whole with all of you. So once we click on that, it's going to take just a moment to jump over there, and then you'll see we have our 2 pipelines that show up right there under opportunities. All right, so I'm going to go into my personal opportunities under my name right here, and you'll see that I've got my listing opportunities right here, and I've got my buyer opportunities right here. Now, these are the 5 phases that cannot be. So we can't change or rename the phases here, but we can rename the stages in other sections. And I'll show you how we do that. Now, I can also, remember, I created an opportunity directly under a contact record. I can also just come into opportunities at any time, and I can click on create opportunity, and it lets me create the opportunity right here. It would be that same window that we just went through together. I would pick, is it a listing or a buyer opportunity? So that it's the exact same screen. You can get there either way. So I've got my listing opportunities that I'm cultivating, my listings opportunities that are in the appointment phase, active listings, under contract, and closed. And then I've got the same thing under here with buyers. I've got buyers that I'm cultivating. Think of that as they've raised their hand and said, we're interested in purchasing, but we're not quite at the appointment phase yet. I've got the appointment, I've got the active, under contract, and closed. And then if you look really closely, you see that underneath each of these phases, I've got the amount of volume that is sitting in that phase, and I've got the average time that something sits in this phase. So I'll show you and I'll walk you through some best practices for how to kind of make sure that we're calculating that correctly. And then over here on the right, I've got my GCI, which just is another term for gross commission income. It's telling me at the top, this is how much income I can potentially make based off of my potential sellers. Now, this is how much I will probably make. So does anybody want to take a guess why I could potentially make this much, but I will probably make this much? Why is that different? Any thoughts?
Is it when you have your stuff goes to the commission or your coaching fee or the Keller Williams royalty?
Okay, yeah, Julie. So some of it might be based off of splits or different things that we have there. Yeah, absolutely.
As well as probability to close?
100%, Sandra. Yeah. So if you look, you'll see that I've got like 9 sellers that are in the appointment phase and 4 that I'm cultivating. I really only have 3 active sellers, 4 under contract, and 1 that has closed this month. So it's potentially based off of what's really going to happen. So if you're really cultivate or appointment heavy, you might see that these numbers are off just a little bit, but that's okay. We want to feed it actual numbers.
And
But
Sydney,
wouldn't
just
it?
a question for you. Isn't it also the artificial intelligence behind it, like kind of tracing your conversion rates in between each phase?
Yeah, and I'm going to show you, Robin, because the more data that you feed it, the more that it starts to understand that. So I'll show you where it actually picks that up from. Yeah, absolutely.
So if it's on the buyer side and you have it under contract, would it take close as well as under contract and use at least all of those numbers? I know on listing, even though you have something on the contract, it may not close, right? But on the buyer side.
So that's where, yeah, it's similar to what Robin was just saying. When you start to feed it from the very beginning, it has very generic conversion ratios. The more that you start to feed it, the more that it starts to understand your conversion ratios. So if it sees that you've got 10 under contract and 7 of them move to closings, then you have a 70% conversion rate of it moving from under contract to closed. So it'll start to do the calculations based off of more that you're feeding it and your conversion rates for that.
All right, I think I answered my question.
Okay, good.
On the buyer side, on the under contract just means you have a listing contract or you have a buyer contract. It doesn't mean there is a contract on a house.
No, so no. So that means, yeah, under contract means we have a closing date, right?
Okay.
So yeah, and then under contract means we have a closing date.
Okay.
Yep, great question. Thanks for clarifying that. The other thing that I want to take a look at just on this page is a lot of times agents ask, well, what's my ratio? What's my percentage of working with buyers versus working with sellers? You'll have all of that down here. So you'll have the percentage of sellers that you're working with, the percentage of buyers that you're working with. We will have a lease pipeline. So if you do anything with leases, obviously feel free to use that as well. And then we'll see this really nice activity tracker right here of all the activities that you've been doing. And then we'll have a list of any transactions you have that are closing this month. So now let's say that I want to go into an actual opportunity and I want to look at some data behind it. I'm going to go into, let me just find a fake opportunity that I have. So bear with me for 1 second. Here we go. All right, so a couple things that I want to make sure you're going in and filling out. So if you noticed any of those, when I go back to the opportunities where I just was, all of these are little buttons that you can actually click on. So I know it doesn't look like it, but you can click on all of these. So if I wanted to get into my active listings, I could just click right here on active listings. And then you'll see it takes me from my listing phases into my listing stages. So I'm saying that when I have an active listing, I've got 3 different phases underneath that. I've got the staging stage, I've got the showing stage, and I've got the negotiations stage. Now, here's a trick that I want to make sure, just take some time and fill in these numbers because this is really cool. If I wanted to go into this opportunity, I would just click on the opportunity name. So again, ideally, this would be the address. This is a fake one though. I'm going to click right on that, and it takes me into all the details about this particular opportunity. So I can come in here and remember when we entered the opportunity in the very beginning, we maybe didn't know the closing date, we didn't know the price, whatever we didn't know. I can come right in here and I can click on this little pencil right here and I can make any edits to it. So I can come in here and change the name of the opportunity, change custom tags, anything that we did prior, I can come in and edit here. But here's the really cool stuff. Down here, I've got the estimated closing date. I filled that in from the beginning. And then I've got some really, really important things next to that. So if you have gone into Command and entered your goals for the year, which is another workshop that we'll have, but if you've entered your goals and said, okay, for 2021, this is how much money I want to make, then you'll see that it's broken down for you. This is how many appointments you need to schedule. This is how many appointments you need to hold, you need to keep. This is how many contracts, all of those things. When you start to do those activities, when you enter the dates in here, number one, it starts to really understand and track your numbers better, just as Robin was asking about. But number two, this feeds into your goals. So it knows, okay, you needed a contract, you needed a closing, you needed to win the agreement, you did all of those things. It tracks those numbers for you. So again, we always want to make sure we're going into the opportunity and we're putting, when did I schedule the appointment? Maybe I scheduled it for today and the appointment date was also today. And then when did I win the agreement? Today at the appointment. And then when is the contract date? If I knew any of that, and then when is the closing? We'll say I don't know any of that yet. But make sure you are entering these numbers and these metrics, because this is where it's going to really start to understand your conversion ratios and also feed all of your data into your goals so that those are reflecting accurate real-time information. Once we've entered all of that, we're just going to hit save. So again, to get into this, we just went back into the opportunity pipeline. We clicked on the opportunity stage that we want to go into, or the phase rather, and then we clicked directly on the opportunity right there. So do I have any questions from anyone on just updating those numbers of the opportunity? I'm just checking chat too. All good.
We can also go in and change the labeling of those phases, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. We're going to actually go there right next where we talk about checklists. But yes, I love that, Jamie. We can change and customize any of that. Yes. All right. So let's talk about checklists. This is one of my favorite features. So when we want to create checklists, there's a very, very easy way to do it. So again, I'll go back completely at opportunities, and you only have to do this once. So this is a one-time activity, and then you'll have it the entire time for all of your business. So we are going to do the same thing. We're going to go into an opportunity. So we'll just go into cultivate under listings. And then you'll see that once I go into here, I've got this section right at the top right that says edit stages. And then you'll see that I've changed my stage names here. So I've got some that are 6 to 12 months out, 3 to 6 months out, 0 to 3 months out. And then you've got these probabilities right here that the more that you feed it, the more it will start to understand that. So if I wanted to edit a stage or change a stage, I can do that here. So I could edit the name if I don't want it. If I don't want that stage to be here, I can completely delete it. If I want to add a stage, so when I'm cultivating a seller, I have an additional stage, I can do that here as well. The cool thing that you also can do is you have the ability to add checklist items right here. And so see where it says 0 out of 6 right here. If you've never created a checklist, it'll say 0 out of 0. So I'm just going to click right here where my checklist is. And again, if you've never created a checklist, you won't have any items here. but we can come in here and we can automatically add an item. So if I say, okay, when I'm cultivating a seller, they're 6 to 12 months out, there's an action that I want to make sure that I'm doing. I want it to be assigned to that. I can click add item. I can just come right here. We'll say that this is a test one, and then I can hit save. So to build out those checklists, if you had 10 items that were checklist items right under here, you would just continue to hit add item, add item, add item, and add all of them until you had all of those items there, and then hit save. Now, once I've added all those checklists, I'll show you how then they show up. So under my listings that I've got under Cultivate, you'll see that when I have the card right here of the listing, I've got this little checklist right here. And this one says I have 0 out of 6 that I've completed. That is my checklist. So I can click right here on the checklist and that checklist will pop up for me. If I have completed this, I can check the button right next to it. If I want to set a due date for it, I can come right over here and set a date and even a time, and that will show up as a task on your homepage when you first log into Command. So again, you're just going to do this once. You're going to come in, you're going to go through each stage here, and you're just going to click edit the stages. You're going to come over here to the checklist. You're going to click on the checklist and you're going to add all of the checklist items that you want for that particular stage. And
what
then
was the client update? What is that?
Yeah, so those pull from checklists. So once we go through checklists, then I'll walk you through client updates.
And one more question about the checklist.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we don't have to set a time and it can just be the date so that it's populated for the whole day? Or does it have to have a time?
You don't have to do a time. Yeah, it'll just, if you don't really pick the time here, it just does the date. If you choose the time, it'll do the time for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Now you'll see over here, I have a checklist that I have 0 out of 6 items. The second that I take this card, because remember all of these we can drag and drop. So the second that I take this card and I move this right over here, you'll see that if I give it a moment, the checklist updates because I'm no longer under the 6 to 12 month frame. I'm now under 3 to 6 months. So my checklist has completely changed. So I can click right here and see the checklist items that are specifically for this stage now for that. All right, so I'm going to unshare my screen for just 1 second and ask you, if I told you that you needed to go in right now and create checklist, would you have a checklist that you could pull from to create?
No.
No. Okay, so I am going to hope that this will make you happy. I'm going to drop in the chat a checklist that I actually have that is not mine. Okay, so this is stolen. This came from a Facebook group. They gave permission. They shared it in Facebook. They said, here's a checklist that I use. I'm actually going to pull it up and share my screen with you really quickly, and we'll look through it together. And I am going to just drop it in the chat. So give me 1 second to do that first, just so all of you have it. It's a PDF, so just make sure that you download it prior to the class ending, and then you'll be able to use that. But I am going to just pull this up. Now, this is a very, very generic, broad checklist. Give me 1 second to just reshare my screen. So you might find that there's things here that you're never going to use. You might find that there's things here that you love. What I do like about it is it's broken out based off of the different stages that we have. So we've got a listings checklist and we've got the cultivate phase. Then we've got items that we might want to do during the watch stage, the nurture stage, and the hot stage. Then we move into appointment. We're scheduling the appointment. We've scheduled the appointment. We've kept the appointment, and so on and so forth with active listings, under contract, and then closed. And then on the next page, we've got the same thing with the buyer's checklist. So under cultivate, watch, nurture, hot, appointment, active, under contract, and closed. So again, I actually went through and I did all of this myself just because I wanted to make sure that I was competent and could do it. And I honestly, I probably carved out maybe 45 minutes and I was able to do every single phase and every single stage. So I just had this checklist open. I went in through each phase, went in and updated that and did it a lot quicker than I thought I could for that.
So question,
Yeah.
when you went through your example before, you had your stages based on time frame.
Mm-hmm.
This one has it based on, I guess, whether it's hot, whatever.
Yep.
What's the right way to do it?
The right way to do it is however you want to do it, that you'll use it. I just think better in time versus hot. The default stages are the cold, warm, hot, which is why that checklist that I just shared with you is that way. I just prefer it to be the time frame, and that's what works for me. So I changed it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, but complete.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sorry, did someone else have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that Gary Keller was talking about in Family Reunion was talking about post-close. Is there going to eventually be a feature for that for us to follow through with our clients after they close?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we go into closing, we'll have closed here, which eventually after the month will fall off. So what I actually have here in my post-close is to add them to, let's see, I might not have it here. I have add them to a post-close smart plan. So if you have a post-close smart plan, then the second that they move to the closed status, that'll be here as a checklist. And then you would just add them to that specific smart plan.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. What else? Any other questions on the checklist, you guys?
I have one. I'm in Command now. I have like an active buyer or just looking, searching. I went into the checklist. There's like nothing there. Is that correct?
Yep. So that's where you have to create the checklist the first time. So what I shared with you is just a very basic generic checklist that somebody created. You'll have to go in and follow the steps that we just went through under edit stages right here. And then you will build out those checklists just once, and then you'll always have them there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else questions on checklists before we move on? We're good. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do, you guys. How many people do I have? I've got 16 people. So we're going to do some really quick breakout rooms. I'm going to put you guys into, we'll do 3 breakout rooms because that'll be 5 participants per room. I'm going to give you about 8 minutes. And I want you to just come up with which checklist are you going to tackle first. So I would love for you to leave here with an action plan. And so I'd like for you guys to come up with an action plan together in your breakout rooms of, I am going to use these checklists. I'm going to start with buyers because that's what I use the most. So just kind of mastermind a bit around the checklist for that. I will give you, like I said, about 7 to 8 minutes. Just keep an eye on the chat because I'll pull you guys back in when we get closer. So let's see, it's 38. So 2:45, I'll pull you back in and we'll talk about client updates and then we'll wrap up for the day. So I'm going to pause the recording for just. All right, everybody should be back in about 3 seconds. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that was helpful. I hope you have kind of a plan in place for the checklist. So make sure that you download those if you haven't already, so that when you're ready to jump into your opportunities and put those checklists together, you have them. Any kind of takeaways or any questions that came up while you all were in the breakout rooms?
We were lost.
I was lost. I'm still lost. I think
Okay, lost in what part? What part were you lost in?
Adding an item or setting up a checklist itself.
Okay, so let's go through it one more time because I want to make sure we're not lost. So give me just a minute.
So I don't have that.
Yeah, because you haven't created yours yet, Julie. So once you create the checklist, you'll have them there.
All right.
So give me one.
Julie, I'll help you. We're actually on an elite team together. So Julie, I'll help you. Me and you can set up a time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jamie. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I don't want to waste anybody else's time. I'm like, why am I feel so lost?
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure. I don't want there to be any confusion. So give me 1 second because I'll just show you guys one more time how you'll get into it. So when we go,
because I just literally did one for a buyer myself, and it took me like 6 hours to think of everything from beginning to end. And it was so overwhelming. And I was like, how am I even going to start a sales checklist?
Oh, Jamie, is that what you're asking from that sheet of paper you were asking me about the buyer thing? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
so we want to make sure we have the checklist first, whatever checklist we're wanting to add. And then all we're going to do is if we are saying, okay, I want to go in and when I have a listing and I am cultivating the listing, so I have a seller that has raised their hand and said, we're 6 to 12 months out, we're 3 to 6 months out, we're 0 to 3 months out, whatever it might be, I want to add a checklist for that. All that we're going to do is once we click into that stage, all we're going to do is click on edit stages at the top right. And once we go into edit stages, we'll have a checklist here. If you've never added a checklist, you'll have 0 out of 0 items. And so when I say, okay, when they're 6 to 12 months out, I want to add these 10 checklist items. All I'm going to do is click on that. I won't have any items here. I would just click add item and I would add them to command or whatever it is and hit save. And then anything I've added with that checklist will always show up under that checklist right there.
Okay. I guess I'm overthinking it.
Yep. So you just won't have checklists until you create checklists, and then you'll always have checklists.
Okay. All right.
All right, you guys. So the final thing that I want to show you is a really quick, really nice feature that you can use once you have created checklists. So that is why we spent so much time talking about checklists, because you cannot use what I'm about to show you until we have created a checklist. So I'm going to go into, I have just this page open where I have a checklist created. And you'll see, and I think Jamie or someone even saw it and mentioned a question about it. When I go in and create the checklist, I will also have next to the checklist, I'll have a client update section. So in the checklist that you guys might enter, are there some things that you might think, okay, the second that I complete that task, I want the client to be updated. So if I schedule the staging appointment, I want the client to update it. If I schedule an open house, I want the client to know it. If the sign is getting installed in the yard, I want the client to be updated about that. So as you are creating these checklists, you'll see that right next to that, you'll have a little box that says client update. So for any of these actions that the second you say this is done, you want the client to be updated, we're just going to check the box right next to client update. And all that means is when I complete this task, that client is going to get updated. And I'll show you what that looks like. And there's just one additional step we have to do. So again, first of all, we have to have the checklist. We can't do anything with client updates until we have the checklist. And then we can check the box next to client update, meaning when I say I've completed this task, I want the client to be updated. So once I go in and say, these are the things I want the client to be updated about, I'm just going to choose close. And then you'll see that I have an option where I'll have like a little gear shift right next to that where I can go in and make some changes. This is an example of a client update. It's only ever going to send one email at the most a day. So at the top of the page, it's going to have your logo. It's going to have your contact information. It's going to have the client name here. So it's going to say Sally Seller. We're checking things off the list. Here's a summary of tasks completed for, and then it's going to have the address. If it's their listing, it's going to pull in the listing photo. If it's a buyer, there's just not going to be a photo there. And it's going to say, we had the sign installed. We scheduled the staging appointment. We've scheduled and planned for the open house. So whatever tasks you are saying you want your clients to be updated about will be checked off right here. And then at the bottom of the page, it'll have your contact information right here. So again, we can't do this without checklist. So we have to have the checklist first and then decide what items we want the clients to be updated about. And we can even decide what time of day we want this email to go out. So imagine if you were sitting at the kitchen table for a listing presentation and you said, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I understand that you being communicated with is probably one of the most important things during the process of selling your home. So I'm going to promise you that by every day at 11 a.m., you're going to have an email from me of everything that I've completed that day or the day prior for you. And we could come in here and change that time. Now it's going to come from you. You're the owner of the contact. And then you can decide, maybe I have 2 people that are selling a house and you only want it to go to one. I can say it's only going to go to the primary client, or I can send it to both of them. And then do I also want to be copied on it myself? So you can determine kind of those settings right here. But again, checklists have to come first, and then we can determine of those checklist items, which of those we would like the client updates to be sent by. And we can do that both on the buyer side as well as the seller side. Seller side will just have a photo, buyer side will not for that.
Where did we lose them? I knew where they were.
So I'm just going to stop the share really quickly, and we'll open it up for any questions or anything that you guys need additional help with. I do have in the chat, can I put the checklist in there? So I'll put the checklist back in the chat right now, just in case anybody wasn't on and wanted to grab those. So give me 1 second to do that. And any questions, you guys, or anything we need clarity on?
On that checklist that you gave us, is there anything that is recommended to send to the client, like or to update the client that you advise us on? Because it doesn't say on that checklist like to
yeah,
that
so
I've
I just
noticed.
and remember, those are like very, very generic nationwide checklists.
Right.
So there's things you might use and things you might not use. So what I would do is, like, as you're looking through it, I would like think of yourself as a seller. What would I want to know is being done and when it's being done? And then just kind of go from there. Some people just say, I want to update the client every single thing for every single thing that I do, because I want them to know everything I'm doing, because they think that I don't do anything. So I would just kind of look at that and think of which ones. I'll just open it up so I can see, because I don't have it open on my end. So let's see if there's anything that kind of stands out to me. So like in the beginning, when you're cultivating, I don't know how much I would really do that, right? Because like, I'm going to call you today. I don't know that I would necessarily do that. You know, but if you wanted to do we're staging the home, we've gotten the keys, we validated the disclosures, we completed the offer prep guide, we had the listing inputted into MLS, we, you know, whatever it might be, we marketed the listing, we scheduled the open house. Like, probably once we get to active, I would let them know more so what you're really doing for them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Will this be available to review later? Yeah, so bless you. So Doug, yes, it will be. And I don't know which market center that you're out of, Doug, but I would absolutely recommend that you reach out to your market center tech trainer, whoever that might be, because we're doing it at a regional level for a ton of you guys, and they can do it more on a one-to-one or help you with any of that as well. Sure. All right, you guys, well, if there are no more questions, I'll leave you with that. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate it. Just as a reminder, next week at the same time, we will be going through the listing presentation. So you have a really great listing presentation that you have in Command that you're able to use and to customize. And so we'll be going through that in Designs next Wednesday at 2 p.m. So don't forget about the trivia question. You all know, you left here smarter than you were, even if it wasn't about Command, right? You left with that trivia data and that information. So feel free to use that. And thank you guys for coming. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Helpful.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.